What's going on, everybody? Today we are talking about using guitar techniques to create signature licks. And we're going to talk a little bit about what makes a signature lick and kind of how you can incorporate knowledge that you probably already have into just some awesome guitar stuff to kind of find your own sound, because that's what it's all about, is being original, finding your own sound. So basically, I think how we're going to get started is just take one scale, one super easy scale. We're eventually going to transition into talking about what we know about chords. And then we're going to talk about some just general guitar techniques like hammer-ons and pull-offs all the time, and slides, can't forget slides, all the while referencing what is a signature and how you can kind of create your own calling card on guitar to kind of find your own voice as a player, because I think that is something that often goes really unnoticed, and you want to be able to use your own creativity and not sound like anybody else. So to illustrate this, we're going to start by trying to sound like everybody else. And we're going to do this by using everyone's favorite minor pentatonic scale, the E minor pentatonic scale, which, if you don't know, just goes open 3, open 2, open 2, open 2, open 3, open 3. And I think there's like a big misconception about scales in general, where they're kind of used almost as just like practice exercises and not really used musically. But what you have to understand is that any signature lick or phrase that you've ever heard is born of a scale or a chord. So it's kind of good to start thinking about it in a certain way. So we're going to use, if we number these notes in the E minor scale, let's try to create what a lot of people would think of as a signature lick, something like maybe like a little Jimi Hendrix kind of voodoo child thing, right? In E minor here. So if we just number these notes, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, right there, the first kind of 6 notes in this pentatonic scale, we're gonna go 1, 1, 3, or 1, 1, 2. I just screwed it up. 1, 1, 2, and then to the second fret of the D string. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So 1, 1, 2, 6. Now, thinking of them as numbers isn't always the best way to do it in the pentatonic scale, but just for this example, I want to use it like that. So we're just running through 1, 2, 6. We only have 3 notes there. And to kind of use the techniques to make it more of a signature type bluesy rock sound, we're going to start with this kind of little micro bend on the G note, the 3rd fret of the E string. It's not just open, open, 3, 2, open, 3, 2. There's a little bit of nastiness right there. Throw a little dirt on that. And then we're gonna jump right to the 2nd fret on the D string, which we found from that scale. It's the easiest scale in the world. I mean, come on. We're gonna jump right to that D string after that bend, and then add a lot of vibrato, which is another technique that you should be working on, which we have videos on Guitar Control's YouTube channel if you want to check out how to do all these different things, which is why you're a subscriber. So you definitely have to subscribe if you haven't subscribed already to the channel, which I'm not sure how you'd be here looking at it if you haven't already subscribed, but definitely do that, because we're going to start using these in more context, okay? So far we just have 3 notes from a very bland scale, but using some of these techniques, we're already starting to kind of make it sound more musical. And all it is just a little bit of a bend, not an aggressive bend, not like, you don't want to get too much of it. It's just really kind of like a nuanced thing. And that's kind of like the thing about guitar techniques is when you first learn them, like pull-offs, maybe you do them like a little aggressively at first, but eventually it becomes more of like a nuanced, kind of softer thing that you can add. Same, especially with vibrato. Right? It's a peaceful Hendrix vibrato, which, you know, in today's society, we just need a little bit of peace. So after we got that, we can even add another one when we come back to the 2nd fret on the D string. Kind of start doing like hammer-ons and pull-offs to kind of get a little more action on that note and draw a little bit more attention to it. So again, it sounds less like more like a, and then even melodies we can find within the context of this one scale, which the next way to do it would be Okay, so, if you know the song at all, like, all I'm doing here is I'm grabbing the open A strings notes, A, 2A, open D, 2D, which we're just walking up this scale, starting on the A string. A, 2D, 2G, back to 2D, back to 2A, open D, 2D. So we're kind of starting to incorporate more melody into the phrase or the lick, and it's all coming from this one really simple scale shape, essentially, right? And now we can even start incorporating more of the back end of the scale. So when I say the back, the higher part of it, which is open 2 on the G string, open 3, open 3. So we can start combining some of these to kind of make these little micro chords, like these maybe 2-note chords. Double stops is like maybe another term that you've heard of. So you can kind of like start by, instead of going open, open, 3, 2D, you can maybe add a little more of a thickness to that first part. All I'm doing there is I'm hitting the open E string and the 2nd fret on the A string to make a power chord. And then I'm jumping to the top of what we just did, doing a little double stop into a double pull off. Very mind-blowing right there if you're just kind of wrapping your head around single pull-offs. Doing the same thing but with 2 strings at the same time. And then I'm jumping backwards through that scale to kind of get these 2 notes, 3B and 2G, and doing the same thing. So all this is coming from one simple shape right there. And then I'm just kind of combining some notes at my leisure. I don't know if you can notice, but there's like a massive storm brewing right behind me. And the name of that storm is the E minor pentatonic scale, because it is so powerful, you can really do anything with it. So again, this is just one simple position. And the more you know about how these scales connect to each other, the more you can kind of start to find what you like about the scale. And what I mean by that is a little bit more about the signature aspect of what we've been talking about. Something that made Jimi Hendrix, which again I'm kind of just ripping off like his version of Voodoo Child a lot in this, is a lot of these techniques that we've been talking about. Kind of like playing around in this shape and doing like double stops within the shape, adding a lot of vibrato to it, albeit we're doing it on an acoustic guitar, and albeit I'm not Jimi Hendrix, so it doesn't sound really exactly like him, but that is the essence of what we kind of have going on right now. So let's start to actually kind of venture outside of this shape, if we will. And the first way we're going to do that is where we started on top with that pull-off. Now, if we start actually kind of adding a little bit of music theory and to incorporate this into more of the playing, we can kind of start to branch out and maybe start to expand upon this sound. So maybe the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take this shape and I'm going to raise that 2 frets. And the way I know that I can do that is by knowing that the E minor pentatonic scale is going to pair really nicely with a different scale, and that's the G major scale. And the major scale, I think, is the most important scale you could ever learn. Everything is derived from that in Western music, specifically, not everything in the world. But what we're going to do is we're going to play the G major scale, starting with your middle finger on the 3rd fret, right? So we have 3, 5, 2, 3, 5, 2, 4, 5, 2, 4, 5, 3, 5, 2, 3, 5, okay? So again, we're going to focus on just those bottom 2 strings. Okay? 3, 5, 2, 3, 5. And now if I want to start combining them, the first thing I can maybe do is I can plant my middle finger here on this B string, which is a D note, and then maybe double stop through the high E string. So I can set it, instead of just playing, Because one of the things that I've noticed a lot when people are first starting to incorporate scales, they're playing sounds like, and they're just kind of like jumping through the scale. They're not really sitting on any one particular note. They're just kind of like just riffing through it forwards and backwards in order. So one thing that I like to kind of like encourage people to do as quickly as possible is to start combining these notes in different intervals. And we can still start in an ascending way. So we're just going through that. So I start with 3B, 2E, 3B, 3E, 3B, 5E. And I'm already starting to kind of like get more of like a musical thing out of there. Now I can also, once I'm familiar with these notes, I can maybe take the notes that I am super familiar with from that first scale, which is just open B, 3B, open E, 3E, and then start. Okay, and I'm kind of starting to get a little bit of a better idea of harmony and how a lot of these notes start to sit together, which is something that is super, super important. Now the next thing is maybe I can take the 5th fret on the B string and then start to double stop through the scale in that way. So now I've got 5B and 2E. Now I've got 5B and 3E, 5B and 5E. And now what I'm putting together is going to be the 3rd fret of the B and E strings and the 5th fret of the B and E strings. So if I go back to my original riff, I'm venturing outside of that shape into double stops from the next kind of connected shape that I'm doing. So really, that could be part of like a signature sound, double stops. And this isn't about just kind of like copying like one way of doing things. It's really more about just kind of like finding all these different techniques and seeing what's available to you, and then finding the things you like, and then just kind of adding that. I'm not saying like, hey, use double stops. Double stops are the way to go if you want to be a true boss. I'm saying these are what double stops are. If you like the sound of something like that, start incorporating them in your playing in whatever way you want to. All right, so maybe I want to go into a slide into the bottom of that shape, right? Which is easy. That's the beautiful thing about this shape is if you notice, the second or the bottom note on every thing is I'm ending on the 5th fret. So all of these notes are available in that scale. So anywhere that I want to slide to from the initial riff will always be fine because I know that all these notes are here. So it's almost kind of like a home base almost that I can always go to no matter what I'm doing. Hello all, says Citizen Kane. What's up? Citizen Kane, solid name. There we go. But yeah, anyway, so we're just kind of like talking about double stops to create signature licks. And we're all kind of basing it off of starting in this E minor pentatonic thing. What's going on, man? Good to see you. So, really, that's just kind of one way that we can start to create signature licks using guitar techniques. And again, I really think the pull-offs are such an important thing to start working on. What's going on, Mark? Good to see you, buddy. And you can kind of do them anywhere, right? Because of the nature of the open strings helping us out here, right? Because like I said, the E minor pentatonic, every first note on every string starts with the open string. That's why we can rifle through it because you can always just pull off to wherever you want. And this side of the G major shape is great because it's always the 5th fret. So anywhere you want to kind of jam on the open strings or the 5th fret is kind of fair game, right? So anytime you want to pull off, no matter where you are, it's going to sound technically fine, depending on where you do it. That's totally up to you. So, anyways, always trying to gain some guitar knowledge. That's why you're here, everybody. So let's maybe take more of an interval-based approach to talk more about kind of creating phrases. again, if you don't know what an interval is just the space between any two notes, right? So the first interval that we did, open to the 3rd fret on the E string. We have a 3 fret space. So a couple ways to describe that. Interval, the space between those notes would be 3 frets. That'd be like the most rudimentary way to explain it on a guitar. If you work in steps, a step being 2 frets and a half step being 3 frets, you could say the interval is a step and a half. Now the most musical way to define that interval would be to call it a minor third, right? Definitely what's going on, that's right. Man, always so good to hear from you guys chirping in. Again, we're on my favorite subject, minor thirds, right? Who doesn't love minor thirds? 3 frets away, it's always a minor third. Why is that? Because in the minor scale or a minor chord, here's the minor scale. 1, 2, 3. 3 frets away is always a minor third. A major third would be open to 4, minor third, open to 3. Now, and that's from any place. If you wanted to go a minor third from 3, you would just go from 3 to 6. Major third, 3 to 7. And even better, what I think is really cool and unique to guitar is that you can slide into a minor third if you go down a string. So if we start on an A, the 5th fret of the E string is A, and then go to the 3rd fret of the A string, which is a C, that's a minor third. It's the same as going from 5 to 8, A to C, however you want to do it. And I think really the sound of sliding minor thirds is a very signature guitar, bluesy, rock, lick type vibe. And this, especially when it comes to licks. I feel like 90% of the licks that I ever see, it's happening in Omer. I hope I'm pronouncing, or is it Umer? Is that an umlaut over it? I'm really sorry if I'm butchering people's names. I do that all the time, no matter where I'm at. Yeah, but the sound of 90% of the licks I hear are just kind of like combinations of minor thirds. So I think the reason that is because they just sound so awesome. They sound great. So we're going to talk about maybe linking a few minor thirds together. And the example that I like to use, first of all, is starting from here, the 3rd fret on the A string, to the 5th fret slide, and then into its minor third, which again, down a string, back 2 frets, back a step. Your interval is a minor third, okay? So I'm going from a D to an F. Now, if you want to get really super happy about it, you can go from a D to an F sharp. That's a major third. Major third, minor third. And the great thing about this exercise, or this kind of combination of signature licks, whatever, yeah, classic Jimmy move, absolutely. We're gonna slide into the next minor third in a key, right? So if this is a D and this is a F, if we go right here, 2 frets higher from where we ended, which is a G, we're sliding into an A and its minor third, kind of like we did here. A, its octave is here. So you have a D minor to an A minor. Okay, now those work really well together as chords. D minor to A minor. We can represent them as in a more of a lick-based approach. So if somebody's just kind of, especially this is really helpful in if you're jamming with somebody else, whether it be a guitar player, piano player, whatever. If there's a progression going on in the background that's like D minor to A minor, D minor, A minor, we can go what up, Tone Seeker? Greetings from San Antonio, Texas. Good to hear you from Sarasota, Florida. But that's just an example of how we're kind of mirroring through intervals a chord progression. And this move is always going to work in relation to these 3 minor chords. In any key, there are 3 minor chords. The 2nd note, the 3rd note, and the 6th note become minor chords. So if we're in the key of C, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, those are our 7 notes. C, D, E, F, G, A, B, and another C. The 2nd note, which is a D, the 3rd note, which is an E, 4, 5, 6, and the 6th note, which is an A, all become minor chords. They all have that minor interval. So a great way to like lock those intervals together is through this kind of little exercise, right? This little run, this lick, however you want to look at it. Sliding into the D, which is the 2 in the key of C. its minor third, going up a step higher, sliding into the A, which is the 6, its minor third, doing the exact same thing, sliding into the 9th fret on the G string, which is a E, the 3 chord, and its minor third. Now if you notice, on the G string, you can't do the same 2 fret shape because we have to compensate for the B string being tuned differently. So we just go 1 fret backwards. So altogether we would have going from the D, A, E. And it's just a way to kind of link the 3 minor chords together in any key. So as long as you're in the key of C, you start with a C. That's where we actually started, but we start with a ring finger sliding. We can start combining into them, right? So if we know that we're in the key of C, which a lot of times you know that if the first chord in a progression is the key of C, a viable option for starting to riff or do a lick or a phrase is to take your root note, which is 3rd fret on the A string, and then just do this little minor third run, which actually kind of, it sounds fancy, it looks fancy, you're covering a lot of ground on the fretboard, which honestly is kind of like the number one thing you want to do is try to impress people like you know what you're doing, is to start covering ground on the fretboard. It doesn't even matter how it happens, but this minor third run is a great way to kind of start doing this. And then now, if we can incorporate that into other techniques that we already have learned, we can do a lot of cool different things. Now, as we said before, E minor is where we kind of end up on. There's the D minor and its minor third, A. This is like an E minor, a root and its third, which if I just kind of focus in on this, right? 9th fret of the G string, 8th fret of the B string. I can mentally connect that to the minor pentatonic thing we started using in the first place. And it looks like I'm doing something really cool. But all I'm doing is I'm doing a really simple shape and then getting into that kind of hot spot that I'm running around at. Would that run be used with chord changes, or is it more passing tones to get from one chord to another? Now, that's a great question, right? So a lot of times these like lead licks and stuff are best used as transitions to another chord, right? So especially, like let's say we're going from, let's find like a useful place to use an E minor as a transitional element. Like maybe if we're going from a G major to an E minor. Maybe let's go from G major to E minor to D, okay? So we could, instead of like 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, that's just a 1 to a 5 in the key of G, G, A, B, C, D. The 1 chord is G major, the 5 chord is D major. We can always just go from 1 to 5, right? Back and forth. Now, a good kind of example of where we might want to spice something up is that last kind of beat, or maybe the last couple beats in between those chords. And a great way to do that is to kind of think about what we were just talking about, where the E, right there's the E, the 7th fret on the A string is an E, its minor third. We can maybe try to use that to kind of like bridge those two together in a different way. And we can do that in any chord in those keys, right? Especially with this C. That was just from a C chord, C major chord, to a G chord, right? Instead of just playing C, 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 then to G, and boring everyone to death, back and forth. Maybe it's even like something that you like haven't, you're like accompanying like a singer or something that's just playing like some kind of really boring song, and you've never played it before, but you just know you have to go from a C to a G. Anytime in between, you can use it as a transitional element. Starting with a C, into that minor third, kind of run that we had and using it as a transitional element to a different chord. Now, you can do that as one way to do it, or you can actually use these as their own alternative voicings for chords in general, which is, I hope I'm answering your question or talking about what you actually asked about. But that's why I think intervals are so important, because I mean, I've played a lot of like kind of pretty easy cowboy chord songs, and the best way to keep from getting bored is to kind of use a lot of these different intervals and scales and kind of techniques to kind of transition between them, or to just kind of change the makeup of the chord in general. So what I mean by that, again, let's just use, let's take two minor chords. Let's take like an A minor to an E minor progression where it's just, okay? So it's just open chords, back and forth. And let's say like that part of the music doesn't change. Maybe let's try to find something a little more interesting. So I just really kind of changed the makeup of that chord by grabbing the E, the 7th fret on the E string, and its minor third, the 5th fret on the D string, and kind of just playing those. And if I want to get a cool sound, I can use the open E string to help me out too. So I went from an E and slid back into an A, and it's minor third, right? So here's the E. Now if I wanted to get a higher A, I would just go all the way to the octave on the A string. And the cool thing about this, especially in the context of this key, is right now when I'm grabbing the 12th fret of the A string, and its minor third is a C, right? And remember on the E part, I was hitting that open E string to kind of drone a little bit, to kind of make it sound a little bit bigger by getting that bass note in there, open E minor, and then this kind of tightened E minor without the 5th. Again, a minor chord needs a 1, a flat 3, a minor third, and a 5. The cool thing about taking this shape up to this A right here is if you hit the low E string with it, you have an A, a C, and an E. And you're really technically fulfilling a full A minor chord because you have that E in there. This would be called an inversion. If you don't know what an inversion is, it's kind of a fancy-ish word. It's where you play a chord, but the lowest note is not the root note. And I think this is more commonly probably spoken about in like the piano world because the guitar fretboard is organized so differently that there's like a lot of inversions that we probably don't even really think of as inversions. Basically, if I have the open E first, and then I have an A, and then I have a C, I almost have a very E-heavy A minor chord. It's very E-ish. But what I could do is kind of use that E to glue together an E minor and an A minor. Which sounds a lot different than E minor to A minor. You can still tell that, like, you know, what makes these triads, a triad being a 3-note chord, any major or minor chord is a triad, what kind of puts these things together is, you know, the essence of it is still there, but being able to play them in different ways, I think is like a really great way to, again, find your own signature sound on a guitar. And eventually, if you just start experimenting with more of these voicings, you'll find the ones that you like. And I think droning is a great way to kind of introduce yourself to that. So what we're actually going to do now, we're going to take a detour, and we're going to talk a little bit more about droning over this open E string. And we're going to do this in the context of E minor, which, again, like we talked about before, E minor is the relative minor in the key of G, right? So we got a G major thing going on. We look at all the chords in G major, and we're going to take all these chords and we're going to turn them into just intervals being its root and its third, major or minor. And this is like a really cool thing that we can do. So again, there's 7 notes in G. G, A, B, C, D, E, F sharp, and then another G. G, A, B, C, D, E, F sharp, G, okay? Now I want to take all 7 of those notes. I want to find out where they exist on the A string. I want to play that root note with this major minor third which should be really obvious and really easy by the time you end up finishing this video or finish watching the live stream, whichever way you're kind of looking at this product. And we're going to start adding those with the E droning on top of it, okay? So let's start with, we're actually going to skip A. We're going to start on B. So G, A, B. B is the third note in G. Now, if you remember the other music theory videos, which I've done on this channel, which again, that's why you subscribed, because you're getting the straight dope right here, the perfect music theory education. We know that the 2, 3, and 6 chords are minor, the 1, 4, and 5 chords are major in any key. So again, we're talking about a B, right? G, A, B. B is the third note. Is the 3, is that major, minor? 2, 3, 6 are minor. So we need a minor third on top of this B note. Now remember, you just go down a string and back 2 frets. So to get a B in its minor third is really easy. You just play the open D string. I'm just hitting just these 2. So that's kind of like the essence of a B minor. I don't have its 5th. I don't want it. I'm not interested in that right now because I want to drone the low E string over this. So really I have an open E, 2B, and an open D. Okay, so that's kind of like the first thing we're going to do. Now we're going to go to the next note in the scale. So B is, right, G, A, B. B is the 3. What's the 4? C, right? And is the 4 chord major or minor? It's major, right? So the 3rd fret on the A string is a C. Now we're going to add its, remember, minor third is down a string back 2 frets. Major third, 1 fret. Which, you know, even if you play like open C, there you can see it. That's a great example of like the shape. You just have a root in its minor third. So we're going to start to add this as this new thing. But we're opening up. We're still droning that E. So we've got the B to the C. Now we're gonna go, that was the 3 to the 4. What's the 5 in G? G, A, B, C, D. We wanna go to the 5th fret on the A string. That's a D. Now is it major or minor? It's the 5. Which one is 5? I'll give you a second to answer. 1, 4, and 5 are major. So D major would be the chord. So we're gonna grab its minor, or major third. And we're gonna, again, drone that over it, okay? So now we've got the B to the C, D. What's the next one? What's the 6 in G? G, A, B, C, D, E. E's our favorite. That's what a relative minor is. The 7th fret on the A string is it E. Minor third, back, just like we did before in the... And then now it's going to sound really great when you're drawing an E over this because it's just going to be like a super E chord. Now we're going to add it again. B. C. D. E. Okay, so what's the 7 chord? Oh, here's the mystery question. The often neglected 7 chord in any key. G. All right, first of all, we'll count through it to find out what the 7 is. G, A, B, C, D, E, F sharp, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Now, it's way easier to find out what the 7th note in any key is, what the 7 chord is, instead of counting forward G, A, B, C, D, E, F sharp. Just go back one single note. G. What's the note for G? It's an F sharp, right? Now, this is, like I said before, the 2, 3, and 6 are minor. 1, 4, and 5 is major. We haven't really even talked about the 7 chord. Now, if you did your due diligence and you watched the video on chord building that we did, you would know that the 7th chord is diminished. And what a diminished chord is essentially 2/3 of a minor chord. It's a chord with it's a root note with a minor third and a flat 5. We're not going to get too much into the flat 5 right now because we're not going to use it. We just want a root note and its minor third. That's what we've been kind of like focusing on in this talk about intervals. So when we get to an F sharp, which is, where am I at? The 9th fret on the A string, right? We can still treat it almost as we've been treating the other minor chords by getting the minor third there, right? Now if we were to really add like the flat 5 element it would sound a little bit different. But we're almost treating it more as a minor chord because we're just adding its third. So right there, that's like a System of a Down song, right? I don't know. I'm not. Yeah, something like that, right? But we're still running through these chords. Now that's the 7 chord. The very next note, just like we said, you just go backwards 1 from the root note of the key, is a G, or you resolve. So again, it's a major chord. It's the 1 chord, so it gets a major third. Now we can still drone over E. So now we've got B, which is minor, C, major, D, major, E, minor, F sharp, technically diminished, but we're treating it as minor, G, major. What's the 2 chord in the key of G, where we've done this before? That takes us back to that A minor, that 2 chord, which we actually kind of started with from the E to the A, remember? So B, C, D, E, F sharp, G, A. Start again. And then resolve on the G chord, the 1 chord, which totally does not sound good. And the reason it sounds weird, even though it's right, to end that little riff kind of thing on the 1 chord, is because we're starting off by droning this E note. Which remember, in the key of G, E is the 6th, where the relative minor is. It's kind of like the most like rockin'. The relative minor, that's why, the minor pentatonic scale is used so much, is because it has like kind of a dark sound to it in context. So by droning an E over all the chords in there, we're creating kind of like a signature sound, the signature of the relative minor, and we're kind of infecting all the other chords with that. So when I try to end this really kind of dark-ish on a major chord, it's like, what the hell's wrong with you, man? That's like weird. You don't want to end it there. You probably want to end it on an E minor. And I would just like to take a second to thank the auto brightness on this phone right now for turning me completely yellow once the lighting has changed. Because yellow is the official color of E minor. So essentially, if we wanted to kind of resolve this, we kind of finish it here on this open E minor, because it's kind of where our ear is leading us, right? There's so much E going on. Now, any of these minor chords could kind of work, and also we could kind of, yeah, no, it's not you. It's like I'm just like awash in yellow right now. But yeah, we could kind of add all the licks and stuff that we used at any point in this. So remember, we started this whole thing in E minor pentatonic, right? To kind of create that signature bluesy double stop, Hendrixy type kind of vibe. But now we're adding drones into it. So any of those things that we want to do, even remember that kind of little E minor move we did here, right? The 9th fret and its minor third on the G string. We can start adding some of that to it. In fact, we could actually kind of make chords out of this. Like remember when we went to this A minor? We could actually kind of add this chord. Right? I'm just kind of getting the A, its minor third, and then an E in its minor third, and combining everything. And a lot of these combinations, you'll stumble upon like a signature sound. Maybe like, ooh, what is that? That doesn't really sound dark, but it's really cool. It's like, how did I come up with that? I don't even know. It's not even like a chord shape that I've ever used before, but I'm stacking some of these intervals, and maybe that could be part of like your signature sound. All I'm doing is I'm just going through randomly, almost frantically, almost playing a lot of like the licks that we've just kind of been talking about, whether it's a combination of this minor pentatonic scale. Hey, Tone Seeker's got to punch back in. No problem. So yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing you next time. I think I'm going to start doing this every Wednesday night at 8. So everybody, 8 Eastern time, everybody clear your schedules to get a little more Sean Daniel in your life right now. And make sure to subscribe to Guitar Control so you get the alerts for when it's going down. Which, do you really need an alert if you know that I'm going to be here every Wednesday at 8? Yes, you probably do, to remind you, because sometimes this time slips away from us all, right? So, we got the minor pentatonic scale. We've got the intervals of the minor chords in there, those minor thirds, or the major thirds, C, D, G, right? Bump, bump, bump. And all these are movable, by the way, because we're not using, with the exception of the pentatonic stuff and all the open strings that we've been using, everything is movable. And, obviously the pentatonic scale is movable if you want to do it in A. And we're using drone notes in a key, in this case, the key of G, and it's relative minor E, to kind of start creating more kind of like licks and stuff like that, to just kind of put together more of like a signature sound. Like I said, some of these chords you may have not like really used before, and even if you want to see them as chords, you don't have to see them as chords. We're just kind of just playing the guitar. I also think a lot of stuff gets made about like, are you playing chords? Are you playing scales? Are you playing arpeggios? Are you playing rhythm? Are you playing lead? It's like, no, that's all nonsense. You're playing guitar. You're just playing a guitar. However you want to look at it, everybody kind of has their own approach. For me, the arpeggios and the scales and the chord voicings and the music theory really helped me kind of find my own like guitar approach to all this stuff. But again, it's not even like I'm consciously always thinking which one to play. Like, oh, I got to play a arpeggio, then I got to get into the minor scale, then I gotta double stop through things, and then I gotta get into like drones. All it is just knowledge. It's just arming yourself with the proper information and knowledge that you need to be successful at anything. And by the way, these aren't just guitar lessons, people. These are life lessons and the wisdom. Arming yourself with just the wisdom of information and being more savvy and more thoughtful in all areas of life, kind of go all over it. How do you arrive at the relative minor again? So the relative minor is always the sixth note in any key. A couple ways to do that. You can count through a key if you know like the major scale, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. You always go to the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So if I start on a G, G, A, B, C, D, E, that sixth note is always an E. Okay? So if you know that major scale shape, that's one way to find it. Like let's say we're in the key of B flat. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I end up on the 5th fret, right? That would be a G. Okay, you can octave down. Now, I think even maybe a quicker way to find out where the relative minor is and where to put your pentatonic shape, where to put your minor scale shape, is just take any root note. Let's take the key of A, right? Instead of counting through A, and go 3 frets backwards, right? So in the minor pentatonic shape, like if we start on the 3rd fret, let's keep it an A. So we'll start on the 2nd fret. Right, there's our pentatonic shape. Your pinky is gonna be on the key that you're in, okay? So if I'm in the key of A major, there's my A. I can think of that as my relative minor's pinky position starting out. And then that's why you can kind of like use those, like to kind of find those. So the quickest way to find a relative minor is to either start familiarizing yourself with counting through the major scale and finding that 6th note, or just going back 3 frets from wherever you are. The beautiful thing about that is you don't even have to know the name of any of the notes. It's like, oh, what key are we playing in? We're playing in this key, whatever this is. Go back 3 frets. Okay, that's where my minor scale riffs, licks I can always use from here. Again, I am a huge proponent in knowing the names of the notes, knowing how they fit together, to be like, okay, we're in this key. What key is this? Well, it's the 8th fret. So I kind of did a little bit of research. I found out, I memorized some of these notes. I found this is a C. So going back 3 frets gets me to an A. But the relative minor of C is A. It's a great, valuable thing to know the relative minor of every key and start just kind of like thinking and just being more thoughtful in any song you play, because there's pretty much major chords in any song. With exceptions, with like really dark metal exceptions. But just knowing what key a song is in is so valuable, because it really helps you kind of like think more about where you can go and kind of where to start taking like a launching point into different things. Again, I think that minor pentatonic, minor scale is such a tasty place to start anything. Like even just, kind of like arpeggio runs, any of the stuff that being able to kind of do that in a minor scale position, knowing that's the relative minor, and then knowing that the key that you're in is super, super helpful. The most helpful thing that you can do is arm yourself with a little bit of information and a little bit of knowledge. That information and knowledge brought to you by Sean Daniel of Guitar Control. So at that, I think we're going to wrap it up here. Again, please subscribe. Spread the word about these live streams, because the more people we get, the more exciting it will be, and the more I can interact with people instead of just entertaining myself with the sound of my own voice, which obviously I'm super in love with, as a lot of you have mentioned before. Thanks a lot for tuning in, and until next time, please hit us with any comments and maybe ideas of different things that you want to see coming up. And hopefully I will see you guys next week, same time, same place. Thanks a lot, everybody.